It's quite well known that the UK has some tiny cities with populations as low as four figures in some cases. I'm looking at you, Wales. Now, what if I told you that there are villages of today that came a hair's breadth from also achieving city status, such as the one you're looking at? Well, pull up a chair, because I'm here to tell you the story of the city that nearly was. First, let's get our bearings, and where better to do so than by the river, or rather two rivers. This is the confluence of the River Thames and the River Tame. Yep, Thames without the S. Not the most confusing river name, since that award's already taken by the River Avon, and the other River Avon, and the other River Avon, you get the idea. Confluences have been popular spots for forming settlements for thousands of years, and this one is no exception, with evidence of Neolithic activity here. The Romans also had a significant presence here, as will imminently become apparent by the name given to it by its Saxon successors, Dorchester. This later became Dorchester-on-Thames, helping to distinguish it from Dorset's namesake county town. Home to barely 1,000 residents today, this is nevertheless one of the most important villages in English history. And here's why. In 635 AD, just 4 decades after Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury, a cathedral was established here, the first cathedral in the Kingdom of Wessex, no less. A modest wooden structure by all accounts. On the same spot today is Dorchester Abbey, dating from the 12th century, but I'll elaborate in due course. Dorchester then was Wessex's de facto capital. A statement of tremendous significance right there, and it remained so for the next 25 years before a new cathedral and bishop's seat emerged a little under 50 miles to the south, that of course being Winchester. In 660 AD it took over Dorchester's role as bishopric for the region, but the real eyebrow raiser is the alleged reason for the shift. Here's where the Venerable Bede, the 8th century Northumbrian monk and go-to guy for Anglo-Saxon historians, steps in with a key insight. He asserts that the King of Wessex had become fed up with the Bishop of Dorchester due to his foul mouth, or perhaps his limited command of Old English due to his Frankish roots. It's open to interpretation. The bishop retired to Gaul, and Winchester became the new ecclesiastical authority in the region. Dorchester-on-Thames would regain its status just under 2 decades later, after it was annexed by the Kingdom of Mercia. This came at a time referred to as the Mercian supremacy, around which point it controlled territory from the Thames all the way to the Humber, a key point in itself which will come into play later. Subsequently, Dorchester became part of the bishopric of Leicester, though sources vary as to when precisely. However, after the Danish invasions of the late 9th century, the bishop's see returned here, presumably for safety reasons, what with Leicester going on to become one of the 5 boroughs of the Danelaw. To that end, a glance at a map of English dioceses from the late Anglo-Saxon era tells its own story, in particular regard to the distribution of cathedrals, with almost none in former Viking territory. Further to that, this same map reveals something very odd. The Diocese of Dorchester is enormous, and the bishop's see is about as far from its centre as possible. But it makes more sense when you consider that the Vikings were to cathedrals and churches what foxes are to hen houses. In the aftermath of the Norman conquest, King William appointed fellow Norman Remigius de Fecamp as Bishop of Dorchester. Remigius made the key decision in 1072 to move the bishop's see all the way to Lincoln, about 130 miles away. The Domesday Book of 1086 would later confirm Lincoln to be the largest settlement in the diocese and the 5th largest in England, making this dramatic move a little more intuitive. Dorchester's cathedral was downgraded to a church and was later refounded in 1140 as an Augustinian monastery, and here it stands today, repurposed as the village's parish church since the Reformation, having been spared destruction by a wealthy local who paid Henry VIII the value of the lead on the chancel roof. Which brings us neatly to the question of what makes a city. As part of Henry VIII's split from the Roman Catholic Church, the presence of a cathedral alone at that time conferred city status. This applied retroactively to ancient cities such as Canterbury, York and Winchester, but also opened the door for certain towns to be upgraded by elevating an existing church to a cathedral, along with allocating the land around it as its diocese. This was the case for Chester, Gloucester and Bristol, for instance, as well as a certain town just 8 miles away, which had long since eclipsed it in size: Oxford. So while Dorchester Abbey could, in theory, have been upgraded to a cathedral, similar to Gloucester Abbey, say, the practicalities of drawing up a new diocese so close to Oxford evidently didn't bear out, in spite of the symbolic significance of what some would call Wessex's first capital. Plus, Henry VIII was invested in the University of Oxford personally, having refounded Christ Church just months prior to his death, which is incidentally where Oxford Cathedral is housed. Since the reign of Queen Victoria, city status in the UK has been opened up to any settlement, conditional upon a successful application to the Crown, regardless of what cathedral may or may not be present there. These have almost invariably gone in the direction of the large towns, typically products of the Industrial Revolution, which is to say, the polar opposites of Dorchester-on-Thames. Its population today of 991, according to the 2021 census, makes it smaller than even the UK's tiniest city, St David's, in the most southwesterly corner of Wales. That said, St David's did have its city status restored in 1994 in recognition of its significance as a place of Christian pilgrimage. Does this mean that you could be looking at the UK's next city? I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, but in the meantime we can always wonder at what might have been for this peaceful Oxfordshire village, wherein lies the genesis, so to speak, of Christianity in Wessex. Thanks for watching and have a great day.